A new season of Diablo is a builder and a theory crafter's dream. New items, rebalanced classes, and a brand new crafting system means you can spend hours and hours tinkering with builds and min-maxing the perfect character. Well, I have spent the last several hours writing down all of my best ideas and notes going into the new season, Season 4 of Diablo for the Sorcerer. So if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on what I think are going to be the most powerful, interesting, and fun builds going into Season 4 for the Sorcerer, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Greetings Internet, DDA here, and I am so excited for all of the changes that are coming out in Diablo 4 Season 4. The PTR actually drops tomorrow, which is actually probably today by the time that I release this video. And honestly, not all of the details are actually out yet for how exactly itemization is changing. We do know that items are only going to have 2 affixes now, and all of the affixes are going to be condensed and more powerful overall. However, we don't know each and every detail of the patch. One interesting thing that I wanted to note was this lucky hit apply vulnerable is very, very significant for the Sorcerer. Previously, only ice builds were able to easily apply vulnerable. A lot of early Sorcerer builds would dip into Frost Nova in order to apply vulnerable. Then they finally added vulnerable to the Lightning Spear, which gave us another option. And this lucky hit apply vulnerable is just another layered option that's going to open up a lot of builds. I'm very excited for this change. Namely, I feel like Sorcerers are kind of pigeonholed into using Tal Rasha Ring. Because you're going to want to use Lightning Spear to apply vulnerable. Then at that point, just adding a third element, it asks the question, why aren't you just using the Tal Rasha Ring? You know, we got the Ring of Starless Skies that is kind of competing with Tal Rasha Ring in a lot of ways. So this lucky hit apply vulnerable, in my opinion, is really going to open up a lot of builds and kind of getting away from us having to use Lightning Spear in all of our builds, and then of course just using Tal Rasha Ring out of convenience. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over all of the changes that are coming to itemization. You know, there are several other videos out there that are summarizing those. And again, we don't know all the details, so I don't want to I don't want to guess on what I think the changes are going to be. I think we could just check out the PTR and get a good initial reaction of what is actually going to happen. Great here on the Codex of Power change. This is going to free up so much inventory space, and I think pretty much is going to solve all of the inventory issues that we've been having. Now, of course, getting into the most exciting item changes and Sorcerer-specific changes that are coming in Season 4. Oh, I'm so excited for all of these. First up, we have Tyrael's Might. That is a unique chest armor that is, while at full life, your skills are going to unleash a divine barrage dealing damage. Now, something I've seen a lot in these patch notes is they're adding while at full life to a lot of abilities, and it is something that is making me very happy because, specific for the Sorcerer, we've had this issue, I'm going to say, where the most optimal builds have been low life builds. Because the Sorcerer is very squishy and damage reduction while injured is the strongest damage reduction stat, most of the endgame builds, a lot of them have been low life builds that have been using damage reduction while injured. Well, to see the ability, you know, while at full life, kind of creating its own sort of builds, full life builds, I'm really excited for that, and we're going to notice that a few more times as we go through the patch notes. And I'm also interested to see if they keep damage reduction while injured. I think they might, but I think there is a chance that they get rid of it. Next up here is Yen's Blessing, a unique boot that casting a skill has up to a 30% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown, and it can only occur once every 12 seconds. Now, this is very interesting for the Sorcerer because it's defensive skills. The first thing that I thought of was defensive skills, you know, Ice Armor and Flame Shield, which got a complete rework in these patch notes. Really cool when we'll go over those. But additionally, what we need to consider is Conjurations. And Conjurations got a huge change, which we will go over. Conjurations overall are getting buffed and buffed and buffed continuously. And I think these unique boots are going to be an interesting way to activate additional conjuration casts in many builds. So I want you to look out for these boots and consider them in several builds. And I think actually one of my builds does include them. Next up here, we are getting an aspect of the Frosty Strides. I assume that this is a mobility aspect, so going on your boots. While below life, your evade is going to freeze close enemies and for cold damage and apply vulnerable, another source of vulnerable. So very interesting here. We'll have to consider this another vulnerable source. And for those sorcerer builds that, you know, fight close, it gives your evade basically a mini Frost Nova that could potentially allow us to not run Frost Nova on our bar. Now, scrolling down here to the new unique items and aspects that the Sorcerer is getting, we are getting 4 new aspects / unique items, and all of these items are just going to be amazing creating new builds that I already, if you check in the video description, I'm going to have in my initial thoughts for what these builds could be in the comment section below in the video description, so you can click and check out what you should probably consider while you're moving into the PTR test realm and moving into the initial stages of Season 4. This is going to be what I'm testing out as these new builds, and they're very interesting. Starting off here with the Fractured Winter Glass, a unique amulet that is casting a frozen orb, has up to a 50% chance to spawn a random conjuration when it explodes, and then additionally your conjurations are going to get a lucky hit that has up to a 100% chance to launch a frozen orb. Now, one thing I want to note with this is that it specifically says casting a frozen orb, and if I know what Blizzard has been doing, such as for the changes that they made to the Chain Lightning enchantment and its interaction with the Static Surge legendary node, and they've removed that away, they're making a clear distinction between casting a skill and getting an automatic conjuration. So I don't think that this is going to create a perpetual loop of, like, you know, your conjurations are summoning frozen orbs that are then casting more conjurations. I think it specifically has to be you casting the frozen orb. And I think this may go for as well with the frozen orb enchantment. So that's actually going to be the first thing that I will test, that I would like to see is, you know, does the frozen orb enchantment trigger this free conjuration? I don't think it will. And likewise, does the conjuration frozen orb trigger conjurations themselves? Which, again, I don't think it will, because they're using this word casting here. But this does create a very interesting build for frozen orb that is going to have many, many conjurations in play. And then, but keep in mind that in general, conjurations have a very low lucky hit chance. So that is why that this is a 100% chance, right? It seems overpowered. But if you look at the conjurations lucky hit, like I think Hydra has 3%, Lightning Spear is like 5%, and I think Ice Blades is 15% at the highest. But that's why this chance is so high, because the lucky hit chances of the conjurations are very low. So we're going to have to compensate for that. And then if you check, I do have an initial Frozen Orb build that I'm going to start testing with. But next up here, we have Flame Weaver, unique gloves. And honestly, like I have played a lot more fire than I have the ice sorcerer. So I am very excited about these Flame Weaver gloves. Casting a fire bolt through your firewall causes it to splint into 4 bolts, dealing up to 100% more damage. Now, let me tell you why this is so amazing. Because something I noticed when I was leveling my sorcerer in Season 3, because I actually leveled a Firewall sorcerer, I noticed that using the Fire Bolt skill with the plus 25% multiplicative burning damage was very, very strong with Firewall. It added a huge amount of damage. And if you think about it, 25% multiplicative damage, that's an aspect. That is a whole extra aspect you are getting. Now, if we have these gloves on, then suddenly the Firebolt is doing a significant amount of damage in combination with your Firewall, then also making your Firewall do more damage. You could get this really nice interaction, And plus, if you consider that Blizzard just came out with all of these Season 2 vampiric powers in aspect form. So, yeah, I'm looking at you, Moonrise. Next up here, we got, for the legendary aspects, we got Aspect of Tenuous Destruction, which I assume this is going to be an offensive aspect. I doubt it would be a defensive one. It'd be kind of insane if it was. But assuming it's offensive, getting up to 40% increased damage while you have no defensive skills on your action bar. So this is going to be for builds where you want to risk it for the biscuit, and you want to, you're going to need a lot of CC to utilize this. Potentially ice builds could use it. We'll have to see. Or maybe a conjuration build that keeps things perpetually stunned with the lightning spear could potentially use this. You're definitely going to need a form of healing outside of that. We have to mess around with this. This is going to take a lot of testing to get just right, but I'm sure we will see it in builds. Then, of course, we have the last fire. Hey, fire. We got two for fire. Next up is the flamethrower aspect. Incinerate splits into 3 beams, each dealing 85% of normal damage. Now, this is just so interesting, and what I want to see is if that 85% can be increased by the amulet, because if this can be increased by the amulet, this is going to be insane. It is going to be tripling, actually more than tripling. It is going to be like pretty much times 5. If you add an amulet onto this, you're going to get out, what is that, like almost 130% the Incinerate beam. So yeah, it's going to be times 4 is what it's going to be. So quadrupling your damage, essentially, with Incinerate. So this is going to be crazy cuckoo, crazy. And I definitely have an Incinerate build. Check out the video description to check that out. So balance updates I want to touch on briefly. Banished Lord's Talisman. Sorcerer didn't really use it, but actually I saw some sorcerers using it because it's just such a crazy busted item that we could just throw it in and it'd still be good. Really glad they're seeing this big nerf here. Nerf to the bolts will, they're cutting the damage in half. It's expected, honestly. There really was no reason to use any other pant. I think this is just, so I don't want you to look at this as Tibalt's Will is too good. We have to nerf it because people are doing too much damage. I really think this is more, they want to increase variety of builds and make other items better. And because Tibalt's Will is just so overwhelmingly good for Sorcerer that they had to cut the damage. Well, really overwhelmingly good for everyone. They had to cut the damage in half because no one's going to use any other pants ever because they're so good. The only other thing I want to mention about the changes to the normal aspects is of Inner Calm is changing, which is significant because of Incinerate. And I really think Incinerate is going to be a big deal in this season 4. So Inner Calm is changing, and on the surface it looks like it's a nerf, but I actually think it's a buff because it's changing from, you get 10% increased damage for each second you stand still, up to 40. Now it's going, you always get the 10%, and then you're going to triple it after standing still for 3 seconds. So I think the big thing about this is you are always going to get that initial 10% extra damage. You're not going to have to wait the second to get any damage buff, right? Because the previous Inner Calm was you had a 0% damage increase. Your initial activation of the skill, it had ramp time, and it did nothing until you stood still for a second. So now you're not going to get, so now you're going to do more damage in the first second, slightly less damage for the second, and then a similar amount of damage for the third second. And we are losing a little bit off the top end, but how often are you standing still for 4 seconds? I don't know about that. But yeah, I think it's an overall buff because we're getting that initial extra damage, like without standing still at all, basically. So I think it's an overall buff. So I just really think they're buffing Incinerate to the 9s. I think it's gonna be really good. Now, before we get into the Sorcerer specific class changes, I wanted to mention the changes that they made to companions and conjurations, because now they're receiving 100% of the player attributes. I think this is just going to be crazy for Hydra. I'm seeing it. I'm saying it now. Hydra, there was a time where Hydra was at the top. It got nerfed because there was a bug. It's coming back. With 100% of the player's attributes on Hydra, I'm seeing it here. And then, of course, another big change is that more skills are now tagged as core skills, such as Sorcerer Mastery skills. So this is going to be big for, you know, your Ball Lightnings, your Firewalls, your Blizzards. All those builds are going to get really nice interactions with previous aspects that they didn't work with, previous skills that they didn't work with. Now they're getting the core skill tag. Really great to see there. Just really knocking home how amazing the Ring of Starlit Skies is for the Sorcerer. We all know it's our #1 ring. And you know, I'm saying this, and I know a lot of you are out there saying, but DDA, I've never had a Ring of Starlit Skies drop. I probably will never see one. They're really doing a lot of work in the crafting system to make us available to make these items. And I think we're going to be able to see it. And sorcerers out there, we know our first craft is either going to be Shaco or the Ring of Starlit Skies. And which one is better? I'm not sure, honestly. I think they're both just ridiculous. But getting into the sorcerer-specific class changes now. Yep, like I mentioned, mastery skills are now also considered core skills. Huge. Frost Nova enchantment, chance increase. This makes sense because, again, I just talked about conjurations have an extremely low lucky hit chance. It's good to see this increase just because it should happen fairly often. Frostbolt enchant, chill amount increase, sure. I think that's just to increase the impact of it. No one's really using this, the Frostbolt enchantment, that much. I think one of my Ball Lightning builds did. But overall, it's just kind of okay. Flame Shield enchantment, interesting change here. Changing to now, it just gives you the Flame Shield upon having a cumulative loss of 100 maximum life, which is interesting. I want to see how this really happens for hardcore characters. You know, if you don't take damage for 30 seconds, are you still getting that flame shield if you go to 0 HP and you take 100% of your life, like in 1 second? Are you still doing that? I hope so. But we'll have to test this out. Like, they're saying that we don't like cheat death mechanics. Well, I think that's because we don't really see it activate. And they really want you to see this activate when you're putting it in. So you're going to be able to see it, right? As long as you're taking damage periodically, you're going to see this flame shield activate now, which is great. But I don't want to lose the ability to cheat death either. So I hope that they thought about that when they made this change. Frozen Orb, here we go. This is what everyone wants. The changes. New functionality. Travel distance is now controllable. I'm pretty sure this is how it worked in D2. If I remember correctly, if you hit spacebar, you could detonate the Frozen Orb. Comment in the comment section below if I'm wrong on that. It's been like 20 years since I played Diablo 2, but I'm pretty sure that's how it worked in Diablo, so it's good to see this. Damage increase overall. I think this damage increase is actually because the new unique they're giving us is an amulet, and because of that, we have to move our Frozen Orb aspect off of the amulet. And I think that's the main reason why they're increasing the damage, because of course, you know, things are not done in a vacuum, right? This is not necessarily them saying that Frozen Orb is too weak. I mean, it probably is. But I think a lot of these damage increases have to do with how things are moving around. Enhanced Frozen Orb is getting a change. Here we go again. The While Healthy. While Healthy Frozen Orb is increased by 45% damage. That is huge. Instead of while cast above 40 mana. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. So we know that Frozen Orb is definitely going to be a healthy build and not a low life build. Very good. Greater Frozen Orb, just getting a straight chance increase and duration increase. Love to see it. Pretty much just saying, hey, if you are focusing on Frozen Orb, you are not going to need another source of vulnerability. You can rely on Frozen Orb to be your only source of vulnerable. Great to see that. These changes to Ice Armor are very interesting. I am very excited about them. Mana regeneration increase. Love to see this because I felt like the mana regeneration of Ice Armor just wasn't strong enough compared to some of the other tools, namely Flame Shield. I felt like Flame Shield was a a one-stop shop. It really just gave you everything you wanted. Life, mana cost reduction, invulnerability, movement speed, mana from Tibalt's Will. It just kind of gave you everything. So it's really good here to see enhanced the reworking of the armors in general, but specifically giving ice armor more mana. Really good to see that. Then they're changing shimmering ice armor to reduce its cooldown by 2 seconds for every 50 mana you spend. Really interesting here, because you're going to be able to keep up ice armor 100% of the time. And I love this because, again, you know, we have these low life builds that are kind of cycling their cooldowns to keep that barrier up. Well, now we're also going to have an additional kind of build that is going to be cycling mana use to keep the ice armor up. That is then going to give you a ton of mana regeneration. Really cool. Love this functionality change. Very interesting. And then mystical ice armor change. No one ever cared about contributing more to the barrier. Come on now. No one ever cared about that. But I'll tell you what we do care about. Chilling close enemies and dealing 15% increased damage to frozen enemies. Hello. So now this is very interesting. So we can either choose between extra damage or extra barrier and mana regeneration. So very interesting there. So if you have the mana regeneration, you can choose the damage. And if you need mana, you can choose the other one with the shimmering ice armor. I love these changes. So great. Frost Nova getting a change. Previously, it would just generate mana. Now it's giving you dodge chance and then getting maximum amount when you hit a boss. And then for the next 8 seconds, successful dodges are generating 20 mana. And if you look at the general section of how they changed, like, the life gain, they're adding a lot more dodge into the game, I feel, and trying to make dodge more useful and usable. Honestly, I don't think Sorcs will really be using this that much, but we'll have to see. I don't see it really being used that much. Flame Shield getting a huge change. Honestly, I feel like this is an overall nerf to Flame Shield. I'll be honest. Although I think there are some nuances here that we need to note and think about, because we are losing the movement speed on Flame Shield, which hurts. I love the movement speed on Flame Shield so much. I'm gonna hate not having it. I'll be straight up. But we are getting a 50% larger burn radius on Flame Shield in its place. Now, what I want to note about this is the incredible high lucky hit chance of Flame Shield. And the fact that Flame Shield is the best skill in the game to activate X-Falls. I don't think that there is a better skill with a higher lucky hit burning chance or lucky hit damage over time chance. Flame Shield is it. It's the crown jewel. You will run into a pack of mobs, and you'll just see X-Falls explosions going off like crazy. So the fact that this has a 50% larger burning radius, we could maybe use Flame Shield aggressively. And if you look at Mystical Flame Shield, you see that they want us to do that, right? Because after Flame Shield ends, surrounding enemies are stunned, and then your next skill within 10 seconds is guaranteed critical strike. Now, what's interesting about this is it's your next skill is considered to guarantee critical strike. So that's any skill. So a lot of versatility there. Like I said, losing the mana cost reduction, losing the movement speed, I think is going to be an overall nerf. They are trying to make Flame Shield be the aggressive shield that you're going to do damage, you're going to get lucky hit triggers, and you're getting free crits. So interesting to see. Flame Shield's still going to be in build. It still activates Tibalt's Will. It still gives you Unstoppable. But it is definitely the less usable now. So really interesting to see these teleport changes. I think that they did not realize how good people would be at making teleport have next to no cooldown. So they're actually moving this ability here to an aspect which we will see below. The enhanced teleport is losing its cooldown decrease. This is going to hurt. Again, this is going to hurt big time, especially raiment builds. Because raiment builds already have a really long cooldown on teleport, But Raymond was usually utilizing this ability very, very well, and often getting that full 3 seconds off of the teleport cooldown. It's going to feel clunky now. It is. We're going to get movement speed, which is nice. Make up for that loss in Flame Shield. But is it going to be... Is movement speed as good as teleporting? Not really. And then Mystical Teleport, interesting here. Because this Mystical Teleport is actually opening up a teleport damage build, which is definitely possible. It was actually possible before, but it's definitely possible now. Very interesting. Teleport dealing 500% increased damage. So take your 22 ranks of teleport out and go farm some mobs. Devouring Blaze, really good to see this. Now it's going to be much more usable. It is not restricted to immobilized enemies. It's any crowd control will activate this. So ice builds, it's going to be a lot easier for ice builds to use Devouring Blaze. Good to see it. Conjuration Mastery, crazy change here with Conjuration Mastery. This is just a straight insane buff to Conjuration Mastery. Conjuration builds are going to go crazy. Instead of 1% increased damage, they're getting 1% increased damage, 1% movement speed, and 2% mana regeneration for every active conjuration. Crazy. The 1% movement speed especially. We're going to be capping out our movement speed with conjuration builds. This is going to be so fun. I'm so excited about this. There's so many good changes. Of concentration, mana regeneration increase if you have not taken damage. No one was using this because you pretty much always take damage. And barrier didn't save you from it, so it was really unusable. But really interesting here. Casting a conjuration skill grants you 25% damage reduction for 5 seconds. So a problem I had with my conjuration builds is if you go full conjuration, you don't use mana. So you lose the mana shield. And this is a great answer to that. Thank you, Blizzard. Thank you so much for doing this. Because this is needed for pure conjuration builds. And I'm going to be trying it out. It's going to be great. So closing out here, because I don't want to just kind of mention everything. I just wanted to note again for the Incinerate build, we are getting a straight buff to the conflagration aspect, that it is actually not only increasing all your burning damage while channeling Incinerate, but is also causing explosions. So we're going to have to see if this explosion damage is increased by either the amulet or putting it on a two-hander. Because if it is, it could be very significant. And then, likewise, of Splintering Energy is always casting an additional Lightning Spear, and then increasing your damage with lightning skills when you cast Lightning Spear. Very interesting. This is going to be a powerhouse aspect. I think this aspect was actually borderline usable in its previous state. In this changed state, this is going to be good. Because casting Lightning Spear always gives you 2. And then the increased lightning damage, I think this is going to be a really, really strong aspect, honestly, straight up. This one's going to bump up all the way. This is basically going to be Lightning Spear's form of the Ice Blade's vulnerability aspect. It's that good, because you're getting the 25% multiplicative, right? So, yeah, it's definitely on that line. Very, very strong. So that's it for the overall summary of all the Sorcerer changes. Really excited. Now I'm going to get into more specific builds. I don't want to spend too much time because all of this is theory crafting. So I'm just going to give you kind of general overviews of skills and what aspects I think and what items I think are going to be really important for these particular builds. We're going to do 3 builds: Frozen Orb, we are going to do Incinerate, and we are going to do Firewall+Firebolt. So the Frozen Orb build is going to have a high reliance on conjurations. It's going to be really a Frozen Orb conjuration build. You really want to heavily lean into conjurations, not only for the amazingly updated conjuration mastery that's going to give you movement speed and mana regeneration, huge, but also the fact that conjurations got massively buffed. You're going to be summoning a lot of them, and just in general, you want your conjurations to hit as hard as possible because you're going to have so many on the field. They're going to be getting 100% of your stats. It's going to be awesome. So starting out here with the skills, 2 into Firebolt, and then max out Frozen Orb and take it to the Greater Frozen Orb. This is going to be great because it's going to apply all the vulnerability that we need with the changes. And of course, grab Elemental Dominance because that is going to affect everything that we do. We are not picking up Flame Shield because we don't really have the room for the on the bar for it, I'll be honest with you. Although I can see it can get worked in a little bit. I like the focus that we have on Conjurations, though. And the fact that they did increase the duration of the Tibalt's Will damage bonus. I think that we can get away with only having one unstoppable skill with Teleport. I think we can get away with it because we could probably get it, Teleport's cooldown down to, we'll say about like 6 or 7 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. So we, I think it lasts 5 seconds now, so that's very low downtime. And then, of course, taking Teleport to Shimmering, grabbing Glass Cannon, the 1 into Elemental Attunement. Ice Armor is going to be our big hitter here. And like I said in the previous video, the previous section, is that you're going to choose between Shimmering or Mystical. Mystical is going to be the damage bonus while frozen enemies, which is going to be huge. And we're going to easily freeze enemies. So if you have the mana, you're definitely going to want to use Mystical. But if you need mana, you use Shimmering so you keep that continuous barrier and continuous mana regeneration up. We don't need Frost Nova for vulnerable or for freezing. Frozen Orb is going to be doing all of that for us. And then we are actually taking Hydra and taking it to summon Hydra for the burn. Now, the burn is significant because the burn on the Hydra is how we are going to be activating Devouring Blaze. And keep in mind, we do not need to immobilize anymore to get those extra crits on Devouring Blaze. We can freeze them and chill them. Any form of crowd control, as long as they're burning, will get this extra damage. So that's going to be huge for our Frozen Orb and Conjuration damage. We are going to be grabbing the Lucky Hit Chance because we have the Lucky Hit Chance trigger on the new amulet that is going to summon Conjurations. So we definitely... Oh no, that's actually the Conjurations are going to summon the Frozen Orb. So that Lucky Hit is going to be why we want Precision Magic. And then of course we are taking Ice Blades, putting Ice Blades on our bar because Ice Blades is actually the best Lucky Hit for triggering the Frozen Orbs. 15% Lucky Hit means that we can get that up to about 30%, maybe like 25 more reasonably, which is really high. And then I actually am taking the Invoked Ice Blades for the higher attack speed. Higher attack speed means more Ice Blades, because we don't really need the cooldown on our other skills reduced. I think it's going to be more valuable for us to reduce the cooldown on Ice Blades, have more Ice Blades, and then have additional hits of Ice Blades summoning more Frozen Orbs. The faster our Ice Blades attack, the more Frozen Orbs we're going to summon. So now if you see my skill setup here, I want to talk about this briefly now that we're on Ice Blade, because I think there's actually 2 forms of this that we can have. 2 forms of this skill setup. I think we can go with what you see here and then using the Hydra enchantment because we're going to be spamming Frozen Orb and Frozen Orb has a fairly high mana cost of 40. We're going to be able to summon a lot of the Hydras with the Hydra enchantment. That's going to give us burning damage for the Taurashas and then additionally the burning damage for the Devouring Blaze. So that's how we don't have Hydra on our bar. It's just automatically activating while we're casting Frozen Orb. Now there's another version of this, and I think just doubling down, having Frozen Orb, like using Frozen Orb and summoning more Frozen Orb, it's just better, right? I mean, it's a 30% chance to double Frozen Orb. Like, I can't see a world where we don't use that, considering we're focused on Frozen Orb so much. But there is a world where we actually run the Ice Blades enchantment and then run Hydra on our bar. We could potentially run Hydra on our bar, maybe replacing Deep Freeze or something like that, because we still want the fire damage for Devouring Blaze and Taurasha. But then we're losing kind of the Deep Freeze cooldown. But remember, with the Ice Armor resets, because the Ice Armor, it's a 20-second cooldown, and then that Shimmering Ice Armor is reducing its cooldown. We can spam Ice Armor, summon more Ice Blades, and get to that perpetual Ice Blades with the Invoked Ice Blades attack speed. Now, the only problem with this, and why I'm thinking that we want to start by doing the other way and just doing the Hydra enchantment versus the Ice Blades is there are a lot of times where Ice Blades linger behind you and just simply don't hit the mobs. Like, they're slow and they have a very, very short attack range. Ice Blades became the most powerful Sorcerer build when we were doing AOZ and we had those stationary Bloodseekers that had an insane health pool. And that's when it really mattered. They were stationary, so the Ice Blades would just swarm around them. But if you're trying to use Ice Blades while you're moving through, you're dungeoning, you're doing the pit, it's like the Ice Blades just are way behind you. It almost feels like the Seneschal. Hey. But seriously, though, that's why I think the automatic activation of the Hydra is probably going to end up being better. But I do want to try out both. I think it's possible that both are good. Or the Ice Blades might have a higher ceiling, but I think the Hydra has a higher floor, and it's just going to be overall more well-rounded and better. Because I don't want to spend time casting Hydra, right? I just want my burning to be on I just want to cast Frozen Orb. And the Hydra enchantment is how we're going to achieve that. So, but yeah, the burning on the Hydra is very important for Devouring Blaze, grabbing Mana Shield for the extra damage reduction, and of course, maxing out on Conjuration Mastery, because that is going to be huge. Then we are grabbing the Cold Front. I'm just grabbing this just to ensure that we are always freezing, and we are just getting that frozen activation very quickly. Of course, we talked about Devouring Blaze, grabbing that. And now there's potential. If you wanted more damage, you could take points at a Cold Front and then just add into Icy Touch if you just wanted more damage. That is an option for you. And likewise, if you needed mana, you could add Frigid Breeze as well. You have to play around with this. But I did feel like the Frozen, just being frozen more often and quicker would be better for damage, because then you're getting the full 18% and the extra 9% multiplicative, kind of making up for this. But we'll have to test it out and see. But I mean, we know that overall this is probably more damage, but we'd have to test it out and see. So with the change to Deep Freeze, I figured we'd throw it in. And then these two abilities, of course, your Shatter is going to be your more top-end damage. Raw damage, just more damage. But if you need mana, Avalanche is there for you. So I would switch between these, as I'm developing the build, as I'm gearing up. I'll probably start with Avalanche, and then because that gives you a nice amount of mana. But then as you get to more endgame, we'll probably switch to Shatter just for the ultimate AoE damage. So that's my initial Frozen Orb build. Just to briefly go over the aspects, I talked about Tal Rasha. Doing Storm Swell on the ring, obviously we're going to have vulnerability up always. We're going to have ice armor up always. This is going to always be active. The amulet is the new Frozen Orb amulet. Then likewise, I have the Ice Blade, Shredding Blades for the extra vulnerable damage, which is nice. I actually have the Accelerating here because I think having the attack speed, casting more Frozen Orbs is going to be better. Because you're going to get more conjuration triggers. Because keep in mind, it's a percentage chance whenever you cast Frozen Orb. Since actually physically casting Frozen Orb is the only way we're going to activate this, we want to use the Wand Focus for higher attack speed. And then I would even go so far as to say we want to use Accelerating for even more attack speed to activate more conjurations. Esu's Heirloom is going to be huge. For crits, for Frozen Orb, and for the Conjurations. And then likewise to Bolt's Will, everyone's still going to use this for the Sorc. It's too good. Using the Frozen Orbit Gloves, and then Juggernauts, good choice there. And then Godslayer Crown. Although Juggernauts, you could go with Disobedience. I think they buff Disobedience. We'll have to see. But choosing between the two, they're pretty even to me. And then Godslayer Crown until you get Shaco. Now, the only other thing I want to note, I don't want to do a full Paragon board here, but the only other thing I want to note is I think the Elemental Summoner node, like, it's been good. It got a huge buff last patch. The fact that the Conjurations are getting 100% of our stats now, this node may be off the chain, especially with the Frozen Orb build, that is just summoning a bunch of these conjurations. So I really want you to look out for this, guys. I want you to test out the Elemental Summoner node. I think this is going to be top tier. Now moving on into the Firewall theory crafted build. Very interesting here. I think this build is so interesting to me. I'm very excited for it. Very, very excited. So starting out here, we are actually maxing out Firebolt, okay? This is going to be a burning build, but also a basic attacking build. Because the new aspect for Firewall actually increases the Firebolt damage by up to 100%. But then it actually not only increases the damage by up to 100%, and that includes the burning damage, right? Because you can see here it does 25x weapon damage on the initial hit, and then it does 62%. So it's basically doing 1/3 of the damage as direct damage, and then 2/3 of the damage as burning damage. So all of that damage is being multiplied, is being doubled. But not only is it doubled, it's actually times 8, because the damage of Firebolt is being doubled, but then you're also getting 4 Firebolts, okay? This is going to be huge. This is going to be basically my Druid players out there that, had the Storm Claw build, that, you double down on the claw, and then you're activating the Storm Strike, I think it's called. That build, Sorcs are going to have a version of that, and it's going to be this Firewall+Firebolt build, and it's going to be so cool. We're going to max out on Firebolt because we are using Moonrise on the amulet, people, on the amulet. I think this is going to be so good. We are going to be getting another 120x. Keep in mind, we are already at times 8. We are already doubling and then casting 4 Firebolts. Well, now we are doubling again. We are getting 120 plus 20% attack speed and 15% movement speed. This build is going to scream. It is going to scream. You're going to be crushing things. And then, of course, Glinting Fireball, that 25% X on Firewall is going to be huge. It's going to splinter into 4, and then you're going to apply it on everything, and then get that huge amount of damage on your Firewall. And of course, take Elemental Dominance, because that's going to increase your Firewall damage. We're grabbing the Flame Shield because this build is going to be so aggressive, guys. It is going to run in. You're going to do a ton. It does a ton of burning damage. So I'm thinking with the burning damage, with the aggressive nature, we're going to want to go Flame Shield. We don't need the Ice Armor because we don't need mana regeneration. Firewall has a low mana cost, and we also are going to be half of a basic attacking build. So we don't need the mana, but the aggressiveness of Flame Shield goes perfect here. And then Shimmering Teleport, of course, Glass Cannon, Elemental Attunement, of course. We are adding in Hydra in here because of the burning damage, because we are also using the Firebolt enchantment. Again, now I am pretty sure, and I'd have to test this out, but I am pretty sure that not only are you going to get the burning damage from the Firebolt itself doing burning damage, but also Firebolt, the direct damage portion of Firebolt, will then additionally apply an additional Firebolt enchantment burn effect. Now, I do not know if the new aspect and also the Moonrise, I'm not sure if those multiplicative damages increase the burning damage of the Firebolt enchantment. That's something I would have to test out. I would want to test that in the PTR. If it does, this build is going to be off the chain. But even if it doesn't, I still think it's going to be really strong. But, doubling down on the Hydra burning damage with the Firebolt enchantment, and then additionally the Firebolt itself applying the Firebolt enchantment, huge. Okay, we are grabbing the lucky hit because we are using the Firewall enchantment, because this is a burning build, and Firebolt has a pretty high lucky hit chance. We're applying the Firebolt enchantment as well, a ton of applications of that, right? Because we got the splintering, 4 hits, everything's hitting, Hydra's hitting multiple times, we got Firewalls going off. We are going to be summoning a lot of Firewalls doing a ton of damage. We have Devouring Blaze in here just because we are using X-Falls. Being that we are a basic attacking build, we scale 2 ways with critical strike chance. So I figured, why not throw in X-Falls? We're doing burning damage with Firewall. We are doing burning damage with Firebolt. Firebolt scales with crit. X-Fall scales with crit. Let's do it. Let's double down on everything. Now, we are doing so much in this build, you can see that we're not running Talrashas. We're not running any other damage other than fire. Whether or not that's a problem or an issue in the build, I'm not sure. But I felt like I was trying to stuff too much in this build. You know, I'm trying to do basic attacks, firewall, X-Falls. It's just, you had to cut. I had to cut something. And so I decided to cut Talrasha and the multiple elemental damages. We'll have to see. This is my first version of the build. So, and then Firewall, of course, maxing that out. We are using Firewall. We need it to activate the splintering. So you're going to start out in fights, summoning a few Firewalls, shooting a bunch of fire bolts, splintering, activating multiplicative damage, summoning more Firewalls. X-Falls is going to be going off. You're activating Moonrise. You're throwing out tons of splintering fire bolts. It's going to be so cool. I can't wait. All right, and then, of course, you have Inferno, more burning damage, you know, more Infernos, more burning damage. Pull everything in on your Firewalls. That's going to be good. I love the new update to Soulfire. It's so much better now. It's going to be a lot better in this build, giving you just raw damage increases. And then, of course, Endless Pyre, because we do a lot of burning damage in this build. And whether or not Isu's Ferocity or Combustion are better here, I'm not sure. There is a chance we go Isu's Ferocity for Ancient Flame. There is a chance for that because Moonrise and Ancient Flame could cap us out for attack speed. Something I want to test. I have Combustion in here for now because I think with the focus on Firewall, with the Firebolt and the you know, the multiplicative damage bonuses going off, I think it's going to be a lot of burning damage. But I have to test it out. We'll see if the basic attack ends up being more damage or the burning ends up being more damage. And keep in mind, even if the basic attack ends up being more, that, you know, 2/3 of Firebolt's damage is burning. So something to keep in mind there. So going over the aspects briefly, I mentioned Moonrise going on the amulet. I think it's just really cool. I'm going to start out with this. I think there's potential here with the attack speed. You know, Firewall likes attack speed. It seems it's kind of slow sometimes. It's clunky. So that'll be nice to get that extra attack speed. And then just the basic skill damage throwing it out. X-Falls, doing it with the fire damage. You know, Firebolt enchantment with the Hydras. Everything's going to be burning so much. I swear I'm going to make Engulfing Flame work, okay? I'm having this in here for now. And the main reason is we don't really have a source of vulnerability in here. The Firebolt splintering is a glove, so I don't think we can use the lucky hit chance to have vulnerable. And so because we can't have that, then we would need some other vulnerable application. We would have to either use Lightning Spear, which I guess we could do if we wanted to maybe drop Hydra. I don't really want to drop Hydra, though. I think Hydra is just going to overall be more damage. I'd have to test it out. So something to consider. Vulnerability is not in this build. I am using Engulfing Flame over, like, say, Storm Swell. So that is the reason that it is in here, because we're not running Storm Swell because we don't have an access to vulnerability. I'm going to test them out. Vulnerability may end up being better because it does increase, like, X-Falls damage, but we have to see. Interesting here, aspect of the Expectant. I think this is very interesting. After attacking enemies, notice that, attacking enemies with the basic skill. So that is not casting a basic skill. That is attacking an enemy, meaning that a single cast of our splintering Firebolt will probably get this up to the maximum 30%, instantly giving us a 30% cast of Firewall. Because keep in mind, Firewall is now going to be considered a core skill. There's a combo. So then we also have Conceited for increased damage while we have a barrier. Esu's Heirloom for the crit of Hydra, and then X-Falls and the Fire Bolt as well. So we got 3 things that are heavily benefiting from that. To bolts is classic. Again, we are using the unique gloves, the new ones that splinter the Fire Bolt. Here, Juggernauts versus Disobedience. Which one is better? We have to see how the I'm assuming it's a buff to Disobedience works out. and then Godslayer Crown until you get Shaco. So this build has to be the one that I'm most interested in and I'm most excited about. Please comment in the comment section below. I think a lot of you weren't particularly interested in Firewall after reading the patch notes. I don't think I had Firewall in my poll because I wanted to have some of the other classes. But tell me, did I hype you up for the Splintering Firebolt Moonrise build? I hope I did, because this thing just seems really cool. But as a last build, closing out this theory crafting video, going into the PTR, I hope you all have fun testing. The last build that we're pushing out is the Incinerate endgame build. This one is interesting because I think I'm not going to use X-Falls in this build. And let me tell you why. The reason why is because I think with the aspect of the Splintering Incinerate that we are going to be able to increase our burning damage. I'm tired of using X-Falls. I have Necromancers use X-Falls all day. I have Sorcerers use X-Falls all day. I love X-Falls. It's a great ring. I'm tired of using it, honestly. And you know what? It may be better to put X-Falls in this build. To start out, I'm not going to be using X-Falls because I want to just have an Incinerate Burninate build. I want a Burninating build. I want a build that just lets me incinerate my opponent. Considering they're adding an explosion to the conflagration aspect, that may kind of shift things even more toward X-Falls, because if that explosion can crit, which it may be able to, we have to look, that will push things more towards X-Falls, because then you'll have two really great things that are scaling with X-Falls. So just a consideration, maybe want to drop one of the aggressive aspects, probably Engulfing Flames, moving the Stormswell to the gloves, and then just throwing on X-Falls. I think I even have X-Falls in here. No, I don't. I'm going to add X-Falls right now to this build, because there is a world where X-Falls is just better. I think that is true. And then I'm gonna change this right now, because I do believe that X-Falls is likely better, especially if that explodes, right? And then likewise the Essu's Heirloom. Look at this. You're getting live theory crafting here. Then we'll add Essu's Heirloom, because if that explosion crits too, it's definitely going to be better. Going into the skill tree, 2 in a Firebolt standard, just maxing out Incinerate. This is an Incinerate build, and then taking it to the Destructive for the damage reduction while enemies are burning from Incinerate. Now, you're going to get that splintering of Incinerate. You're going to get very many enemies burning with Incinerate. So it's going to be very easy for you to do this. It's going to be very interesting. And we are actually grabbing Fireball and taking it to Greater for the explosion with burning damage. Because I thought, hey, you know, it'd be really cool, being that Incinerate is going to split. You're going to have this giant flamethrower. It'd be really cool if you would just farm and then just like, you would just spray things down and you would just have all these explosions. You have the explosions going off from the conflagration. You have explosions going off from Fireball enchantment. And then additionally, all the burning damage that you're applying, you have 10% of that being applied as additional fire damage on the Fireball. Really, really good there. I think that's going to be great for farming. And then likewise, of course, grabbing Elemental Dominance, because that, I guess, just affects every Sorc skill now. Grabbing the Flame Shield, because again, this is going to be a very close. And likewise, this is definitely a build that's going to be able to utilize the Flame Shield, activating X-Falls. So definitely grabbing that Flame Shield, taking it to the stunning portion of the Flame Shield then as well. Teleport to Shimmering, Glass Cannon, and Elemental Attunement is standard. Of course, we don't need Ice Armor because Incinerate doesn't use that much mana. It's very easy to not use that much mana. And then, likewise, I know probably many of you are wondering about the two-hand. So, I like the wand, the unique wand. It's cool. It adds a lot of lucky hit. So, there is maybe a world where you use that wand. I do want to experiment though with a staff, because I think the staff doubling the new Incinerate aspect, then therefore doubling the explosion damage that we are getting from Incinerate, may be really, really good. And also keep in mind that I love using two-handers when the slow attack speed of the two-hand doesn't really hold you back, right? You saw that in my Meteor build, right? Because in the Meteor build, we were limited by the cooldown, not the attack speed. So using a two-hander ended up being way more top-end damage on the Meteor. Well, similarly here with Incinerate, Incinerate applies a burning damage every second. It does not matter how much attack speed you have. Incinerate is limited by the way the burning mechanic works, right? So using a two-hander will actually increase Incinerate's burning damage by about 20 to 30%. Then you are further increasing your damage by doubling that Incinerate aspect. So I think using a two-hander is actually going to be much, much higher raw Incinerate damage. The wand may be higher, more X-Falls procs. And if you want a heavy, heavy, heavy X-Falls focused build, you probably would want to go with the wand. However, the thing I want to test out first, where I want to start, is first starting to see how high I can get Incinerate's damage. And I believe that using a staff over the wand focus will be just way higher Incinerate damage. Like, it's going to be way, way, way higher. And then, likewise, I'm saving the amulet slot for the Incinerate, the new aspect that's causing the splitting, the flamethrower-like effect. So, and I think that it's going to also increase the damage of that aspect itself being on the amulet. Going and maxing out Firewall and taking it to mages because we are using the Firewall enchantment. Incinerate has an amazing lucky hit chance. So it's going to be summoning a ton of Firewalls. It's going to, and keep in mind, the conflag aspect increases all burning damage. So that is increasing your Firewall damage by a ton. It is going to be a ton of damage from Firewall enchantment, and we're not even going to need to cast it. We are literally just going to spam Incinerate and be summoning Firewalls, doing a ton of burning damage. And to go over the aspects briefly, I mentioned, so X-Falls is here. I am going to test out the Engulfing Flame. I want to try this out. Esu's Heirloom, again, for the Conjurations and the Fireballs and the X-Falls. If you don't end up using X-Falls and you go with Engulfing Flames, you could mess around with this. You could use the new dodging one that activates when you have 60% HP, makes everything vulnerable, right? So then we'd have actually a really great thing to do because we're going to be sucking everything in. We're going to be standing still and taking damage. Well, then you can dodge out, freeze everything, make everything vulnerable, then spray them down with Incinerate and finish the job. That's an option if you end up not going with X-Falls. But if you are going to go with X-Falls, Esu's Heirloom is just way too good. Tibalt's Will, standard, and then Storm Swell. We have that. Again, we have Lightning Spear for vulnerable. We have Ice Blaze for vulnerable. And if you do end up going with those boots that can dodge and add extra vulnerability, that would be great. And likewise, we can also have the Lucky Hit apply vulnerable on the glove if we want, as another form of vulnerability, just to make sure that we're getting that damage increase on everything, burning and X-Falls. I have Disobedience here because of the dodging, and I feel like dodging is going to be really important when you're standing still. You want to be able to dodge, so I have Disobedience over Juggernaut, and then Godslayer until you get Shaco. So I hope you liked all of my theory-crafted builds for the Sorcerer. We're going to be coming out with theory-crafted builds for the Necromancer and Druid. So please hit that like and subscribe button if you like this video. Hit subscribe to see those videos and to get all the best guides and builds moving into Season 4. I cannot wait to splinter my Moonrise Splintering Firebolt Firewall build. I'm just so excited about it. I can't wait to try it out. So if you're excited for Season 4, comment in the comment section below. And as always, turn your dial to Random Number Gaming for weekly updates on Diablo 4.